everyone. Thanks for hanging tight. This is Go Local Live. We're in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. Joe Warzycha is here from the Rhode Island SPCA. And we're talking about a couple different things happening within Rhode Island and looking forward to having this conversation. We've been emailing back and forth all week talking about this. So we're talking about new legislation that is in the House right now. It's House Bill 6023, and it pertains to unlawful containment of a covered animal. And Joe, you're here to help us break it all down. What it means, what implications it has for animals, what implications it has for Rhode Islanders. And so let's get into it. What is this bill, and what kind of talk to us a little bit about it?
Sure. So it is a complex bill. The easiest way to explain it is to probably break it down into two separate sections.
Okay.
So the first part, what the bill is designed to do is ban the use of battery cages in the state of Rhode Island and add that to what is already considered unlawful confinement of a covered animal. So currently in Rhode Island, gestation crates for pigs are banned, veal crates for calves are banned. And what they're looking to do is add battery cages to that list of unlawful confinement.
Okay.
The second part of the bill would ban the sale of any products that come from farms that use those types of confinement.
Okay, so we're looking at adding those laws into what's already happening here. So in your experience working with not only law enforcement, but with the RISPCA, is it a problem that we see here in Rhode Island with farm animals in this? I mean, do we need to pass legislation?
Well, I think, yes, we do need to pass legislation. Is it a problem in Rhode Island? People may argue that it's not, because currently there is only one farm in the state that still uses battery cages.
Okay.
But we see it as still an important issue. That farm has roughly, I want to say 40,000 birds. So it's a lot of animals. It may just be one farm, but it does impact a lot of animals. So it is an important bill, despite the fact that we may only have one farmer in the state that currently uses that practice.
Okay. Why don't we take a step back before we continue getting into this? Can you describe what a battery cage is or what containment is? Let's get into that for people that might not even be familiar with what this is.
Yep, I brought some pictures. I'm not sure if they're able to be seen.
Yeah,
but
let's show them.
All right, so we'll talk about the battery cage first. So a battery cage is a means to confine an egg-laying hen, okay, a female chicken that lays eggs. The biggest issue with the battery cages is obviously space. So the industry standard for the floor space requirement for a battery cage is 67 square inches per bird. So to break that down, it's roughly 3/4 of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So you can imagine a full-size bird with wings having, 3/4 of an 11.5 by 8 sheet of paper, where it roughly spends 22 months is the average egg-laying lifespan for a hen. So for 22 months of its life, it's confined in a cage in that manner. Basically, is able to perform bodily functions, lay its eggs, eat and drink, and that's pretty much it. What is already banned are gestation crates and veal crates, and again, I can show you some pictures, because pictures probably explain it a little better than I can. So what you have here is, I don't know if you want to turn that around, but that's what a typical battery cage looks like for an egg-laying hen.
Are these pictures from Rhode Island, or
They're
is
not. No,
this is
these
just a typical? Okay,
correct.
this is just a typical overall picture.
You got it. And the next one.
This is like, what, 10 chickens?
Yeah, so they don't necessarily define the size of the enclosure, but it's how many birds you put within that particular cage. So again, they put enough birds in there to give them roughly 67 square inches. And with these types of farms, I can show you the next picture, they're generally set up in this manner where there's just rows and stacks of cages, and it kind of looks like that.
Okay. So this is the same thing, or this is what we're moving towards?
No, this is what we're getting away from.
This is what, okay, I was
This
doesn't look any better, Joe.
So this is, the first picture was just more of a condensed picture of a particular cage, but this is what if you walked into a farm that uses battery cages, that's what you would see. You'd see rows and rows, very long rows of stacked cages in that manner with conveyor belts. The eggs get laid, they come down on the belt, they go through the system, and the birds spend their whole life in the cage.
Okay.
All right, so we covered battery cages, which is the focus of this bill. Now, what's already banned in Rhode Island are two things. Gestation crates, those are for pigs.
Okay, and this is already banned?
Already banned, correct. And that basically, those are for female breeding pigs, and they're kept in enclosures like that roughly until they give birth, and then they move into a different type of enclosure. But for a good period of their life, they're kept in a manner where they basically can just stand up. They can't turn around, lay down, and act like a normal pig
An animal,
should. An
yeah.
animal should, correct. Yep. And the last one is a veal crate, and those are for calves, and basically, again, confined in a manner designed to produce a specific type of meat for the consumer. In the same fashion, they're not allowed the freedoms to turn around, lay down, and act like a normal calf should. So basically what this bill is aiming towards is requiring the same standards for egg-laying hens that Rhode Island already requires for pigs and for calves.
Okay, so because I've gone over this extensively.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they've done is they want the same requirements for the egg-laying hens, and it's not just the hens; it's for all fowl, is what it's.
It is, and in the bill,
and all that kind of stuff.
and the bill has a much broader spectrum.
Yeah.
Because if you look back at legislative history in Rhode Island, in 2012, the General Assembly banned the veal crates and the gestation crates. So it was the first step in recognizing the freedoms that animals need, especially the freedom of space. In 2013, the Rhode Island SPCA introduced a bill that talked about adequate living conditions for all species of animals. And within that definition, it talks about the ability to maintain comfortable rest, normal posture, range of movement, basically behave in a manner that species is designed to behave in. We wanted that bill to include all animals. And we got some pushback from the farming community, and they said, well, livestock, they're different. They shouldn't be in the same group as domestic animals. So we kind of cut our losses. We figured a partial win was better than a total loss. So within that bill, it said shall apply to all animals except for livestock, and not to complicate things. But then the next step that came out of that was the creation of the Rhode Island Livestock Welfare Council, which was part of that bill, and said the state shall create this council that shall come up with the best practices in the industry for livestock, which I'm also a member of the council, and I took part in that. So there's a whole set of regulations that address livestock and the requirements they should have. And interestingly enough, if you look through those regulations, which I happen to have here with me, and again, not to complicate things, but it includes cows, pigs, chickens, turkeys, sheep, goats, llamas, alpacas, horses, ponies, mules, donkeys. It pretty much covers the spectrum of livestock. And if you look through these regulations, with every species of animal, except for the chickens, there's language in there that says they must have adequate space. So we're not really asking for anything more than equal treatment for all species of animals in the state of Rhode Island. And we've come so far where we've mandated it for all the other species. We're just looking to take it to that next level.
So who is supporting this? You just mentioned a couple agencies.
Yeah.
Who are the supporters looking to get this through?
Sure. So the bill was put in by the Humane Society of the United States, and I don't want to leave anybody out. They came to the Ocean State Animal Coalition, which I think you have some familiarity with.
Sure.
I'm the president of the board for the Ocean State Animal Coalition. The coalition is represented by 10 humane organizations in Rhode Island, and I'll list them very quickly. Rhode Island SPCA, Providence Animal Rescue League, Potter League for Animals, Providence Animal Control, Animal Rescue Rhode Island, Paws Watch, Tails to Teach, Paws Rhode Island Veterinary Medical Association, Companion Animal Foundation. So I would say those are the 10 largest and probably most recognized animal welfare industries in the state. The organization supports the bill. It was a unanimous vote on all organizations to support it. So there's a lot of local support on a more broader spectrum. I think I have in here. 30 Rhode Island farmers are supporting it, the Center for Food Safety, the National Consumers League, and several national and local farm groups. So we get a lot of support for the bill. A little pushback, but the little pushback is coming from industries with a very large voice. So I think that's our struggle with trying to get this bill passed.
Okay, so in Massachusetts, they actually just passed something quite similar from what I've read, looking at that bill and looking at this bill in Rhode Island. And in Massachusetts, it was successful putting a law. It was, from what I can read, and maybe you can tell me otherwise, it seems pretty similar. And voters overwhelmingly voted yes, 77%. Voted to do something like this to give chickens the space. Is something like that with neighbors right next door, does that give hope to Rhode Island to maybe push that forward, or does it put pressure on Rhode Islanders?
Well, I think both. I mean, I think it always helps when a neighboring state or community sets a precedent. I think the concern is because it's so new, they haven't necessarily seen the effects long term.
Yeah.
So
figured out the right way to do
so
it.
that may be the only downside to that, but it does. It certainly helps. And it was passed by a ballot measure, which is a little different than passing a bill through legislation. But the support was overwhelming, and I think it calls Rhode Island to step up to the plate, and be comparable to our neighboring state of Massachusetts for sure.
So, and we talked a little bit about not only who's supporting it, who's behind it, but talking a little bit about implications. This, if it does go through, if it does pass through legislation, wouldn't go into effect until 2022, from
Correct.
what I understand. Mm-hmm. Does that give the people who need to put this into effect, the farmers, does that give them time to make adjustments? Is that why it wouldn't go into effect until 2022?
So sure. I mean, the time frame was to give basically around one particular farmer time to comply, and not to say it has to be done next year. When I went to the State House and heard the testimony, the argument was it would be very costly to this one particular farmer. And again, we're not looking to put a small business out of business, and I think that's one of the biggest struggles. And what I heard from the members of the committee, they're concerned about putting a Rhode Island business out of business.
Yeah.
The Humane Society has offered to assist the farmer in at least researching grant opportunities for some money to help him make that transition. And also an important fact to talk about is the livestock regulations that became effective. They became effective as standards in 2014. They became regulation in 2016, which basically makes them enforceable now.
Okay.
Within those regulations, there is already a phase-out period for battery cages. The Livestock Council has already made that decision. It's further down the line. When we were faced with this challenge, we sat down with Little Rhodey, which is the farm in Rhode Island, and we said, what is your life expectancy of your car and equipment? And he said, I need another 20 years, 25 years. So we were gracious enough to say, okay, well, in 2035, battery cages will be banned in the state of Rhode Island. So it's already going to happen. This just makes it happen a little bit sooner.
Yeah, okay.
So even the Livestock Council recognized the importance of spatial requirements, but we tried to balance that with keeping a small business in business. So this bill just speeds it up a little bit, and I think it's important because, again, while it's only one farmer, there's a large number of animals, and there's always a turnaround, and it's just that simple requirement of space I don't think should be put off any longer than it has to. So I think 2022 is a reasonable time frame. I think it also coincides with where the industry is going, because there are a lot of major organizations that are already going to cage-free.
Cage-free products.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, and let's talk a little bit about cost, and I don't want to throw you too much on outside of your expert area of knowledge. But we talk a little bit about putting the burden onto who does it put the burden onto? Cost. Does it drive cost up for consumers? On one hand, if we do pass something like this. Two, is it almost up to consumers if we want to have products that are cage-free? If we're looking, is it up to us to spend our dollars in that direction?
Sure. And that was So the first one, as far as cost, because that was one of the major issues brought up at testimony, was the cost to the consumer and the cost to going from battery cages to a cage-free system. I'm going to read some basic statistics here. Iowa State University compared gestation crates to cage-free, and it was actually 11% less expensive for cage-free. As far as egg production, they're saying roughly 1 to 2 cents per egg will be the only change in cost. Now, this may happen over time. It may not be immediate. And one other thing you mentioned that was also brought up at the State House was, letting the industry decide, let the consumer decide, let the consumer sway or change the market. And I would say the consumer is already doing that, because when you see industries like Stop and Shop, Target, Walmart, vowing to go cage-free, to me, they're doing that because it's a response from the community. So I think it's already happening. I know some people just don't like to legislate things. They just, maybe want the market to make that decision. But, when you're dealing with an animal and you're dealing with welfare and you're dealing with what's considered cruel confinement, and the market's already making that gradual trend, we're just trying to make it happen a little more quickly.
Okay, and it sounds like so much research and so much has already gone into the back end of this that this is just seems like the next step. So it seems like this is the last line.
Right.
That's what it seems like.
It does, yeah.
And actually the Humane Society is putting in, has a couple events coming up if people are interested in getting involved in this, right?
Yes.
Coming up Monday and Tuesday, I believe, of next week.
Correct. Yep. So basically these training sessions will kind of educate the citizen about grassroots efforts, how to help us get this bill passed. We'll talk about things knocking on doors, writing letters, contacting your local representative. Monday, May 8th, it's going to be held at South County at the North Kingstown Free Library from 6:30 to 8 p.m. And on Tuesday, May 9th, at the East Providence Public Library from 6:30 to 8 p.m. You can also go to humanesociety.org/Rhode Island for information on how to support this bill and also information on the upcoming seminars.
What do you think? It's currently being held for to do more research. They're doing more research. What's your feeling?
Well, what I've been involved with this from the very beginning, and I've heard a lot of information about research and statistics, and that's not my particular area of expertise, but I've heard both sides. The people in favor of and those against will all come to you and say, well, here's my research that says this.
Yeah.
What you can't argue is very simple, is space. I mean, you can have the egg producing industry saying that, there's less disease and less mortality and, it's better for the animal to be in a battery cage system, and you can have those in favor of cage free say just the opposite. And I've seen pages of statistics for both sides. But I've been to farms that utilize both systems. And to me, it's pretty simple. I mean, when you tell me that this animal is going to be confined in this manner for the majority of its life, that's a fact, a visual fact that, is inarguable.
All right. I think we'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Joe, thank you so much for joining us with Rhode Island SPCA, also speaking on behalf of OSAC and every other animal organization. You're involved in a lot.
A larger voice today.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and we definitely appreciate it. Keep us updated on how things are going and how things are moving forward.